Every system has a creator. But not every creator remembers what they built. The screens turned red at exactly the same moment across every hallway, every classroom, every corner of Blackvale High School. Not one at a time. All of them. Simultaneously. Like a single command had been sent from somewhere deep inside the building's architecture, somewhere that none of the 3 district leaders had ever accessed, somewhere that the system had been keeping locked until this exact moment. Students who had spent years learning how to read the school's signals, who understood the difference between a warning bell and an assembly command, who knew which flicker of which light meant trouble was coming, looked at those red screens and felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. They didn't know what this meant. 2 words pulsed across every display. Elimination list, active. The panic that followed was different from the fear that usually lived in Blackvale's hallways. The usual fear was structured. It had a source, a face, a district attached to it. This fear had no structure. No hierarchy to shelter under. No leader to align with for protection. Students who had spent years positioning themselves carefully within the system looked at each other and understood, in the same instant, that the positions they had fought for meant nothing right now. Seo Jin-woo stood in the center of the main hallway and didn't move. His eyes were different this morning. Not harder, sharper. The way a lens sharpens when it finally finds its focal point after adjusting for a long time. So this is the real structure, he said quietly. To himself. To the red light above him. To whatever was listening. Choi Min-jae appeared at the corridor junction to his left. For once, his expression wasn't calculating something in advance. It was catching up. His hands were out of his pockets. Han Jae-kyung materialized from the darker end of the hallway, already positioned, already watching, but with a stillness that was different from his usual stillness. This one had uncertainty underneath it. Jang Tae-young's name had already been removed from every screen in the building. Where his rank indicator had been, there was simply blank space, the kind of blank that doesn't suggest emptiness but erasure. 3 powers remained, all of them unstable. And the system was not finished. The distortion came without warning. Not a sound, a frequency. Something that moved through the walls and the floor and every surface simultaneously, like the building itself had inhaled and then couldn't exhale. The lights didn't flicker the way they usually did. They convulsed. The screens that had been showing red went to static, then to something between static and signal, and then the Black Veil system's voice returned. Except it was different. The artificial flatness was gone. What replaced it was something that shouldn't have been possible from a machine. Something with weight, with texture, with the particular quality of something that has been waiting a very long time to speak and is choosing its words with care. Phase 2 corrupted. Pause. Long. Like processing. Original control unit, awakening. Jin-woo's expression changed. Not dramatically. A single degree of shift that on him was the equivalent of someone else taking a step back. Original control unit, he repeated. In the floor of the corridor 20 meters from where they stood, a seam appeared. Then a separation. Then a staircase descending into a space that none of them, not Min-jae with all his family's influence, not Jae-kyung with everything the underground district had mapped of this building, had ever seen on any schematic. Min-jae took one step backward involuntarily. Jae-kyung's eyes narrowed to the specific narrowness of someone recalculating everything they thought they knew. Jin-woo walked toward the staircase. He didn't invite anyone. He didn't look back. He simply walked forward the way he always moved, like the decision had already been made before his body acted on it. After a moment, Min-jae followed. Then Jae-kyung. Not because they trusted what was below. Because standing in the hallway with no information was worse than descending with the possibility of it. The corridor underground was cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. Surgical. Like a place that had been designed for function and stripped of everything else. The walls on both sides were covered, floor to ceiling, edge to edge, with student records. Photographs. Files. Names printed in the clean institutional font that official documents use. And through every single one of them, without exception, a single line had been drawn. Crossed out. Not one or two. Not a section. Every record on every wall. Hundreds of names. Hundreds of faces. All erased. Jin-woo walked slowly, reading them as he passed. His jaw was set. He didn't speak. Because the information being communicated by those walls didn't need commentary, it was its own statement, complete and devastating. This school had not lost students over the years. It had not had students transfer out, drop out, move away. It had rewritten them. Whatever they had been when they arrived, whoever they had been processed by the system and replaced with something the system found more useful. The control chamber at the bottom of the stairs was vast. Screens floated midair without visible support, displaying data, rankings, names, behavioral patterns, predictions. The architecture of the room felt different from everything above it. Older. Like the school had been built around this room rather than this room being built inside the school. And in the center of it, in a chair that wasn't quite a throne but held that quality, sat a man. Jin-woo stopped walking. The man was looking at him. Had been looking at him since before they entered, like he had known exactly when they would arrive, exactly how long the descent would take, exactly where Jin-woo would stop. His face was wrong. Not frightening. Wrong in the specific way that something is wrong when it is too familiar in a context where familiarity is impossible. He looked like Jin-woo. Older. The same bone structure, the same quality of stillness but worn differently, the stillness of someone who had been holding something for a very long time and had stopped noticing the weight of it. His eyes had the same sharpness but with something else layered underneath it. Something that looked like it had once been hope and had been processed into something more durable. "You finally made it," he said. His voice was quiet. Not warm. But not cold either. Somewhere between those things, in the specific register of someone who has run out of the energy required to perform either. Jin-woo stood completely still. Every calculation he had run since arriving at Black Veil, every observation, every pattern he had identified, every conclusion he had built toward, was being simultaneously confirmed and overturned by the person sitting 20 feet in front of him. "You," Jin-woo said. The man smiled. Faint. Like a reflex. "I was wondering when you would remember." Behind Jin-woo, Min-jae's voice came out low and stripped of its usual composure. "What is this?" Jae-kyung said nothing. But the sound of him taking a single step back was audible in the silence of the chamber. The system spoke. Original air confirmed. The man stood. He moved the way Jin-woo moved, same economy of motion, same absence of wasted energy. He walked toward the center of the room and the screens rearranged around him like they were responding to his presence the way flowers turn toward light. "This school was not built to educate," he said. His voice was level. Not dramatic. The tone of someone who stopped needing their revelations to land dramatically a long time ago. It was built to contain. To process. To produce. Pause. He looked at Jin-woo directly. "And you are not a student." Silence. "You are a backup copy." The words moved through the chamber and hit every surface and came back changed, smaller, somehow, which was wrong because what they contained was enormous. Min-jae's sharp intake of breath was audible. Jae-kyung's fists closed. Jin-woo's head broke first. Not dramatically, internally. Images arriving in sequence without invitation. The same school burning. Students moving through corridors he recognized but had never walked. His own face reflected in screens that were showing something other than a rank. His own hands at a control panel. Then a sequence he couldn't hold in focus. Deletion, darkness, restart. His legs adjusted without him deciding to adjust them. He put one hand against the nearest wall. "I wasn't transferred," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. Pause. "I was recreated." The room shook. Not an earthquake, a system failure. The kind of structural instability that happens when two processes running in the same architecture encounter each other and neither is programmed to yield. The Black Veil system's voice split. Two frequencies, two tones, overlapping and competing in a way that made the air feel like it was vibrating at the wrong speed. Primary air detected. Backup anomaly confirmed. The screens exploded into data. Rankings across the entire school disappeared simultaneously. Every level, every district, every carefully maintained hierarchy that had taken years to construct, gone in the time it took the system to process its own conflict. Above them, through the ceiling, they could hear it, students crying out as the structures they had lived inside dissolved around them. Min-jae's composure broke entirely. "This is not a school anymore." Jae-kyung reached for something at his side. "Then it's a battlefield." But his hands weren't steady, and the certainty that usually lived in his voice was absent. Because neither of them could operate in a situation they didn't understand. And this was a situation neither of them understood. Only Jin-woo understood. Both of them. The two of them stood facing each other in the center of the chamber. The screens orbited them. The system's dual voice continued its conflict above and around and through everything. "You were made to replace me," the original said. "When I failed." "What did you fail at?" The original looked at him for a long moment. "Control," he said. "I tried to break the system from inside it. It rewrote me instead." Pause. Something shifted in his expression. Not regret exactly, but the thing adjacent to regret in someone who has run out of time for it. "You are doing better than I expected." Merge conflict detected. The system's voice had stopped splitting and consolidated into something worse. A single voice carrying both frequencies simultaneously, which shouldn't have been acoustically possible and felt like it. Only one air can exist. The walls of the chamber began losing coherence. Not physically collapsing, digitally. Like the room's reality was a file that was being rewritten in real time and the rewrite was corrupting the original. Min-jae grabbed a screen edge for stability and his hand passed through it. Jae-kyung hit the system core with everything he had and watched it regenerate in under 2 seconds. The original stepped forward. This system was never meant to choose one air, he said. His voice was entirely calm, which in this room in this moment, was the most unsettling thing that had happened yet. It was meant to choose the stronger version. He stopped in front of Jin-woo. Close. The distance between the same face at 2 different points in time. Now decide. Final merge initiated. Jin-woo looked at him. At the face that was his face. At the eyes that had his eyes' sharpness and something else he didn't want to inherit. At the stillness that looked like his stillness but had been arrived at through a different road. A longer one, a worse one. He said one word. I refuse. The system convulsed. The screens went white. Then dark. Then white again. The dual frequency returned and then multiplied, 3 voices for the system fracturing along lines that hadn't been visible before, revealing architecture underneath the architecture, structure underneath the structure, layer after layer of something that had been built over a very long time by someone who was not in this room. A voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Not the system. Something above the system. Neither of you were the final design. Every screen in the chamber displayed the same thing simultaneously. True King, still missing. Everything stopped. The system. The voices. The dissolution of the walls. The conflict between primary and backup. All of it paused. Like a held breath. Jin-woo stood in the silence and looked at those words. And for the first time since he had stepped out of that car on the first morning, since he had walked through the gate that closed like a trap behind him, since he had stood in the underground hall and said for now, he smiled. Small. Quiet. The smile of someone who has just discovered that the game is larger than they thought, and finds that interesting rather than frightening. So I'm still not the real one, he said. From everywhere and nowhere, very quietly, the system whispered its final words of the night. Welcome to the real school.